was a rash decision. It was like 3 weeks. He was offered the role. We were like, okay, let's do it. My daughter was only probably 8 months old at the time. And within 3 weeks, and we moved. It wasn't a light decision, but it was like, I need to try something different. So things just did not work out. The whole community wasn't what we thought. Everything fell apart. We had no financial security. Like I found myself in a place where every single one of my belief systems about money started to be torn apart. The savings that I did have, we were living on, and I was seeing that number drop down every month. And I was like, what am I gonna do? It was like, who am I? Why am I here?
Hi, hello, hello.
Oh my God, you look amazing. How are you?
Cute. It's been a very frantic morning. I was like, we're here. I'm good. I'm good. I'm very good. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Child-free morning, so it's perfect.
Your mom lives close by.
Yeah, she's about 20 minutes away, so sometimes it just gives me the space to just be
Yeah, yeah,
and run around after them, so it's lovely.
yeah. And you're up north, aren't you? Somewhere up north.
No, I'm in Gloucester. So we did live up north, but that
Oh.
we moved back like a year ago around now, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So we're here back home. This was where we were before we moved up north. We were up there for a year and things didn't quite work out, so we moved back.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, 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 cool.
Awesome. We'll talk about it. Is there anything you need? Do you need to like grab any water or anything?
All good.
All good.
Alrighty.
A cup of Kangen, I'm assuming.
Yes, I was gonna have I have some herbs in the morning, like a drink to like regulate hormones.
Mm.
No, I'm really feeling like cold water today.
So, welcome, welcome, welcome. This little channel is called Tales of Transformation. So, I'm basically talking to people who are doing things differently. They're breaking the status quo, they're returning to nature, they're challenging the paradigm. So, we've had Dee Zabara on, who is, supporting women who've been told that they need IVF or can't get pregnant, etc., in creating healthy pregnancies, healthy babies, healthy families. We've had a quantum dentist from Australia who's looking at, the cranial bones in relation to systemic health. We've had all sorts of really, really cool people on. And the reason I wanted to have you on is just the way you're doing family. The way you brought your children into the world, the belief systems you had to overcome. Because I do read your posts and your stories, and I understand that you were told that maybe that wouldn't be possible for you, and how you overcame that, home birthing your children, and then leaving a very stable, reputable career that people will be like, why on earth are you doing that? To do something that you're now very passionate about, that's given you financial time freedom and also a beautiful community that you can tap into to learn new skills, and also feel like you have like women that are really supporting you as well.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things I'm really excited about when I watch your things. And I think I've been following you from maybe the beginning of your channel, of your Instagram page, which hasn't been long, I don't feel, but
A
has it been
year.
a year? A year?
Yeah.
And you've grown really well, like really well. And I've seen you be so consistent. So I think there's a lot that goes into that, because it's not easy to like speak on the internet at all. And I think you've spoken to that it maybe not have been a natural thing for you initially. And it just, you committed to this vision. Like you had a vision for your family and you had this opportunity and you were like, okay, I'm going to go all in. So let's start there. And by the way, I do remember I've watched some of my episodes back and I never say my name. So hi everyone, I'm Raji, just in case. And we've got Preena. This is Preena, and I'd love for you to explain to us what it is that you used to do and what it is that you now do.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for having me on. It's really lovely to be asked to do this, especially like somebody like you who really sees things from a very holistic point of view. And like you said, you've connected with lots of different people in different fields. And I just love that. I love that you've asked me, and it's such an honor to be here, first of all. Yeah, so that was that. So I've been all over the place. So I started as a radiographer, so I that's what I qualified in. I then moved to Hong Kong. I worked as a radiographer in a hospital out there for 1 year. And then I got to a point where I'm like, I actually can't do this. And it was only a year in. Imagine like studying for 3 years to work 1 year and then be like, I can't do it. And that was, I believe now, my soul basically saying that that was the start. Like, you don't belong in this industry.
Yeah.
I was following like basically a whole system that at the time I was very into.
Mm.
Something within me was like, no, you can't do this. So I left. I became like an English teacher in Hong Kong first because I wasn't quite ready to leave. I just met my now husband,
Yeah.
and although I wanted to get out of the profession, I wasn't ready to leave Hong Kong. So I just found what I could do. So I was teaching English out there for the next 5 years. And then we got to a point where it's like, okay, do I see Hong Kong as somewhere I want to settle? And it was a no because I didn't ever want to bring up kids there. So we made the decision to move back to the UK. And was a managing director of a nursery for the next 6 years. So working in Bristol, living in Gloucester, commuting every day. And it's not that I've not enjoyed that role. That wouldn't be fair. I did love it. But after I had my daughter, like a year into the role, I realized that I was giving up my time with my own child to
Yeah.
look after other people's children, and it just didn't feel right. And so at the time, I was very stuck, but very addicted to the stable income,
Yeah.
which so many of us are. Like if you've always been an employer, then you can't no, sorry, an employee, sorry, you can't imagine not having that stable income. And my husband was an entrepreneur and his income would fluctuate all the time. And I was like, I don't know how I could cope with that.
Yeah.
It was stressful for me. So I stayed in that role until I got to a point where I just given birth to my second daughter. And the only reason I actually left the role was because my husband decided to put his time into creating an off-grid community. And that happened to be up in the Northeast.
Mm.
And so, really, like, it was a rash decision. It was like 3 weeks. He was offered the role. We were like, okay, let's do it. My daughter was only probably 8 months old at the time, my second daughter.
Mm.
And within 3 weeks, we rented out our house and we moved. And it was a decision that didn't it wasn't a light decision, but it was like I need to try something different. So that was me leaving the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
We then were living up there for a year and things just did not work out. Like the whole community wasn't what we thought. Everything fell apart. We had no financial security like we thought we were going to have. And for the next year, I found myself in a place where every single one of my belief systems about money started to
Yeah.
like be torn apart
Mm.
because the savings that I did have, we were living on,
Mm.
and I was seeing that number drop down every month. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I didn't realize that my worth was based on how much money I had in my bank account.
Mm.
And by not having it, I now didn't feel worthy. I
Yeah.
was like, who am I? Why am I here? And everything came back to age. Like, what 32-year-old makes this decision when they have children? Like, I should be stable. Like, we all have this kind of programming of when we're supposed to succeed, certain age brackets that we're supposed to have achieved something. And for me, it was like going backwards. Like, what
Mm.
have you done? You've the last 7 or 6 years that you spent building a career, saving this money, you've now just thrown it away.
Mm.
And so for me, that was a really big turning point because over that period, I was able to understand that money doesn't define me. Money is just energy.
Yes.
And if we tie ourselves to our worth to money, then we're doing ourselves a massive disservice because we are so much more, we are so much more powerful. And this system has been created so that we diminish ourselves.
Mm.
And most of us are so stuck in the fear of not having money that we live a life that doesn't actually serve us, that doesn't give us our dreams and our hopes and the happiness that we want because we are tied, like I said, to that addiction to the stable income.
Yeah.
And so that's how I ended up in the field that I'm in now,
Mm.
which is completely like an entrepreneur, something I would never have done. I completely put myself into that because I knew that it was the only way to give me what I wanted.
Yeah.
That was time with my children,
Yes.
to be able to travel as we wish,
Yeah.
and most of all, to home educate. Like, I wanted the freedom to be able to do what I want to do with my kids whilst they're at this age of their life,
Yeah.
because we never get this back,
Yeah.
right? So that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing right now,
Yeah.
building a social media presence, which, like you mentioned, never had done this before, never had a voice on social media. So coming out of my comfort zone and doing that, it was very easy to be like, is this the right thing?
Mm.
Because sometimes we're torn between what feels
Mm.
like discomfort, but then is that like, can we confuse that with, oh, it's not for me,
Yes.
you
Mm.
know? And for when I have, every time I had that doubt of, is this for me because it feels so uncomfortable, it was remembering I'm actually doing this for a reason.
Mm.
Like, this isn't just something I've decided to do because it sounded fun, although I do love it now. It was like, this is for my kids.
Yeah.
They have always been the the accelerator for everything I've done in
Yes.
my life. And prior to having my daughter, my first daughter, like when you mentioned Dee Zabara, like
Mm.
I was also told I couldn't have kids.
Yeah.
And I was 26, and they basically said like the only option was IVF. And to be honest with you, I was going to do it.
Mm.
Like, we were about to go to Bali to get married, and they were like, you can have this surgery before you go. And I was like, okay, just sign me up. Because I was so in the system and
Yes.
I was so driven by fear. And the way that the surgeon talked to me, it was fear inducing. And
Mm.
it was, if you don't do this, you're going to have all these issues. And thankfully, it was my husband who was like, no, get a second opinion, try something else before you go and do this, because this is something you can't change.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was very much in my victim, like telling him that you don't know how it feels to be told this as a woman.
Yeah.
But then something inside me was like, he's right. Like, as painful as it is, he's absolutely right. Like, who is this man to, as in the surgeon, to tell
Yes.
me what my body can and cannot do?
Mm.
So that was when I really moved into energy healing.
Yeah.
I found an energy healer very local to us, and she started to do what I had no idea. It was something called access consciousness at the time. But I think she used her own sort of intuitive healing abilities. She's a very, very powerful healer.
Mm.
And I noticed that within a few months, I was like, okay, the pain is actually subsiding, because I was having quite a lot of discomfort because I was told I had fluid in a fallopian tube, and that was causing discomfort. But I noticed that the pain was changing.
Yeah.
Um, and within, like, the surgeon told me I wouldn't get pregnant even if I tried, because he was saying that the fluid is toxic and would, I don't know, kill any eggs or something like that.
Mm.
So I wasn't expecting to get pregnant, and
Mm.
I got pregnant within 2 months. It
Yeah.
wasn't something I was trying to do, but I was told I couldn't. So I was like,
Was it within 2 months of working with the energy healer or within 2 months of trying?
2 months of the energy healer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a massive shock. She
Mm.
then told me, she was like, I see a couple of children in your future. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I had that baby. I thought I had it together. I went to a hypnobirthing class. I was
Mm.
like, this baby's going to be born in water, in hospital, because that's all I knew. We have babies in hospitals.
Yes.
I got to hospital and they decided that that was not the way I was going to birth.
Mm.
Took all my choices from me,
Yeah.
wasn't allowed to have a water birth, very much lie on your back. And all I can say is that the trauma that I suffered took 3 years to get over.
Yeah.
Um, I was adamant I was never going to do that again.
Yeah.
Um, and it, like I said, it took 3 years before me and my husband decided actually should we like have another child, and the reason that we did was because I did a meditation based on trauma. And in the meditation, I had no idea what to expect. I wasn't a meditative person, but I was like, I'm just gonna give this a go. And I sat there and I did it. And I cried and I saw myself holding a baby and I didn't know who this baby was, but I was
Yeah.
like, after that, I was like, I'm ready. Like I'm okay.
Yeah.
And something that I did miss out was that after I had my first daughter, I did have a lady in my NCT group who had her baby at home.
Mm-hmm.
So whilst we're all sharing our traumatic birth experiences,
Yeah.
she said she had this baby and it was easy. And I was like, that can't be right. So I then just, even though I wasn't necessarily going to have another child, I joined a load of home birthing groups on Facebook
Mm.
just to see because I
Yeah.
was curious. I was like,
Yeah.
I've never heard of anybody having a baby at home. So story after story, I was hearing all these beautiful stories of like these women that are having these empowered births at home.
Yes.
And I was like, then this cannot be coincidence.
Mm.
Like it just can't. And subsequently, I was also hearing all my friends and family telling me that they're traumatic
Yeah.
hospital births. And I was like, there's a
Yeah.
divide here, and
Mm.
it's very obvious. So when I became pregnant with my third, I was like, I'm having this child at home. Like, I don't know how, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I looked into a doula.
Mm-hmm.
I found one. I decided, like, we didn't even have the money for it, but I was like, it's gonna be worth it.
Yeah.
Paid her so that we had the presence of somebody
Mm.
that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I was a bit afraid because this
Yeah.
was still after the COVID stuff that would a midwife be sent out to me at home?
Mm.
And I didn't feel comfortable enough to do it by myself, although
Yeah.
I probably would now. At the time, it was like, no, I just want that comfort of somebody who just has that feminine energy.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you like how important that was because my husband didn't have a clue.
Yeah. Yeah.
All sorts of things that were not helping. Because he was just like in a panic state, and like men don't know, like they don't have that, and putting that pressure on them is actually really not fair.
Mm.
So when my doula came through the door, my whole being just relaxed. And within two contractions, the baby was out after she'd got in.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
a fast, yeah, it was amazing. But I said, as soon as the Thea came out, I was like, oh, is that it?
Yeah.
Like, I could do that again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of like a big synopsis of what's happened over the last 7 years.
Beautiful. Love it. Um, I know I'm going to get this question from people. Would you be open to sharing your energy healer that you use? Because people are going to be like, who is this person? I need her.
Yeah, so her name is Valerie Dees. She's located in Cheltenham. And actually, there was a lady who heard my story on Instagram.
Mhm.
And she reached out to me and she was like, I need to see your healer.
Yeah.
And she did because she was like, I've had exactly the same diagnosis as you.
Yes.
And she said her symptoms were a lot worse than mine. She was literally bedbound,
Yes.
especially when it was the time of her cycle and or
Um,
time of the month, sorry. And she worked with Valerie even remotely because she was living in London.
yeah.
I think now she lives in Mauritius.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like Valerie's able has been able to help her too, and she's helped me on so many levels. After I've had my baby, she's worked with my babies. She's done so much for us, but she's just an amazing woman and like a massive like I have so much gratitude because my life would literally not be the same without her.
Oh,
Like I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't met her, and I just think it's one of those things like she's she's a lot wiser. She's like in her 70s. She's just like
um,
beautiful soul.
yeah.
But yeah, happy to pass her details to anybody who wants it.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's just those little angels that come along in human form
Yeah.
that you kind of need to change your trajectory. And with regards to working remotely, energy is non-local, right? Exists in every point of consciousness contains the entirety of the whole. So why wouldn't it work? Of course it does.
Yeah.
Um, love that. Love that. Valerie Dees. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's interested, I'm sure you can find it with a quick Google. Let's talk about how sustainable your life is looking now versus when you had this kind of radiographer role or those 9 to 5 roles that everyone would say, look, you're doing well. Why would you leave this? What is your life looking like financially now versus before?
So, despite having a stable salary before, we
Mhm.
were still stretched.
Mm,
Like, we weren't able to still choose the things that we wanted. For example, if we wanted to go on a holiday, I would be like, okay, we need to save for this holiday.
yeah,
Be very much like, okay, where's the cheapest place we can stay? How can we do this? And that is when you literally put your soul and your energy into like 40 hours a week. Like that's a massive part of your life, and you're still not able to choose. And so for me, like moving into entrepreneurship, which is something that I never understood, it's like that idea of having uncapped income.
hmm,
So that for me, yes, it can be up and down. And especially when we start, we may not necessarily see results in any field.
yeah,
Like, my husband being a coach and a healer himself, like when he first moved, we lived in Hong Kong, he first moved to the UK. It took years for him to become established.
yeah,
But he didn't give up. He didn't say, okay, I'm going to just go and work, for an employer. He was just like, I'm going to keep going. Like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm not actually supposed to work for anybody. And so for me, like, I didn't understand this up and down. But now the power of being able to create an income, which was 6 months worth of income in a single month for me, which was something I've done in the last few months,
mm,
and seeing that that is now given me the space to not only like slow down now for a couple of months if I
yeah,
want to, give myself that time to breathe. Like this was a massive shock to my nervous system to go from like earning like just a small amount or an okay amount to a substantial amount in a short space of time. Like my nervous system was all out of whack. And
yeah,
so I was like, I need to just do nothing for a while. And I wasn't stressing
yeah,
because I knew that I'd made the money. And
yeah,
when you've got automation to your business anyway, like
yeah,
it keeps on going. Like you still have a flow of income coming in and you're not necessarily putting in that work. That's not to say that it doesn't take work.
yeah,
It does take consistency and it does take, a focus on where you're going because this isn't just something for the short term. Like I'm working for the long term. Like my vision is 5 years focused on this so that then I will be stable. I will have my business set up. It will be working with or without me. And
yeah,
then from that point, it's like, okay, what do I actually want to do? What other things do I want to do with my life? Like, where do I really want to give back in other ways that
yeah,
I couldn't before?
yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like right now. And I
Mm.
just sort of there, like, let's see how this journey unfolds. For me, I feel like the biggest impact that I'm making right now that I wasn't able to make right before was the empowerment piece. Like helping somebody go from a place of, I don't know how I could do this. I don't know how I could break away from what people think of me. I don't know how I could break away from a job that has made me feel so secure. I don't know how to break away from the limitations of not having money. There's so many facets that come from going into entrepreneurship, and it's like a huge healing journey in itself because you learn who you are. You learn about your values and your beliefs, and you also realize the power of just being you exactly as you are.
Yeah,
Like nothing needs to change. I don't need to be a different person in order to be successful.
yeah,
I just need to be me
yeah,
and share my story, share my learnings over the past few years, because that can change somebody's life. The information that I have within me, that we all have within us,
mm,
has the impact to completely transform somebody else. And I think I used to think that I needed to be a healer or I needed to do something in that kind of space. And I realized like we're healing just by being
yeah,
who we are. And I that's massive. And it's nothing like I'm no different to anybody else.
yes,
I just stepped into the discomfort and I embraced it and saw it as a way of becoming the version that I'm supposed to be in the future. If I don't push myself, if we don't push ourselves, we kind of are just the same year upon year. And and I know that that's okay for some people, but for me, that wasn't what I wanted to be for my kids.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think for anyone watching this, if you're looking at Preena and saying to yourself, oh, well, it worked out for her, I think what I'm seeing here is that in every decision, and these have been big decisions and scary decisions, and decisions that have really cost you at times, and decisions especially in your Kangen phase chapter of your life right now, is okay, it's uncomfortable, but how do you know the difference between that discomfort of this isn't aligned versus this discomfort is actually expanding and growing me? What I'm hearing is you have a really strong sense of purpose, which is rooted in your children and who you want to be for them and through them and with them, and a really strong vision for your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if people are sitting there and going, okay, this is uncomfortable. I've made this big decision, or I'm struggling to make a big decision that's going to have a lot at stake, then it's answering those two questions. Am I rooted in some sort of purpose? And can I see this feeding the soil of that purpose? And do I have a strong vision? And is it feeding that vision? And I'm seeing from you, those almost have been your kind of compasses throughout this journey.
Yeah, it's just like it's a gut feeling. Like
Yeah.
the decisions that I've made in my life, it didn't make sense to be 21 and move to Hong Kong.
Mm.
And then I met my husband, who
Mm.
literally completely flipped the way I did life.
Yeah.
He was the one who introduced me to the energy world.
Yes.
He was the one who kind of was like, you don't have to listen to what people tell you to be and to who they're telling you to be. You're like more than that.
Yes. Yeah.
So, every decision that I've made, it didn't necessarily make sense. Like you've mentioned, obviously, the business is in Enagic. I sell water, but
Yeah.
in order to make that shift, like people say, why would you need to invest in order to sell a product? And there's two facets to this. It's we can't sell something from our soul if we don't know what the experience of that product is.
100%.
Then
Yes.
you're just doing it like you're doing it empty.
Yeah.
You're never going to have the passion behind it. But
Yeah.
the other thing is that if you haven't got uncomfortable, and for most people that is financially uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and for me that was investing at a time where I actually had no savings, I had no income, I couldn't get a loan, I couldn't do anything. And so finding a way when you couldn't find a way is step one of success. And a lot of people think that all their ducks need to be in a row in order to make that step. And that's actually not the case.
Yeah.
Taking the step when everything is a mess. I had every reason not to do this because like we physically didn't have the money. But what I did have was a supportive husband who
Yes.
was like, if this is what you need to do, then let's find a way. But the other thing was, it was like, not going to say no. So even if I don't find a way right now, I'm going to find a way at some point because this is I didn't know if it was going to work for me, but I can't not try. I have to give it a go. And life is just about making decisions. There's no right or wrong. It's
Mm.
all a learning.
Yeah.
So when we lose the attachment to, is this going to work? It's like, this is just a decision I make today. If in a year's time this isn't for me, I make the next decision.
Exactly.
Like, there's no heaviness. Like, we're here to learn, we're here to grow, and we can only grow if we try.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, like, that was my thought pattern. So when I didn't have the money, it was funny because like the universe provided. My
Hmm.
husband hadn't had any work for a year, and then he had a client from Hong Kong that he worked with for years that reached out to him literally out the blue. I was like, I'm going to work with you. I want to pay however many months up front. And so he gave me the money.
Mm.
And I couldn't have seen that happening. And then, to be honest with you, we needed the money for other things.
Yeah.
Like he believed in me and my vision, and not everybody has that support, and I understand that.
Yeah.
And I was very blessed to have that. But even if he didn't support me, I knew that I could not go back. I couldn't go back to a 9 to 5 because that would have meant sending my children to school and my youngest to nursery. And that to me wasn't an option. So I was like, I will do what I can, even if it doesn't work, to know that I have tried everything to make this work. Then at least in the future, if they say to me, like, oh, if
Mm.
you wanted to home educate us, why didn't you? And for me to say, like, I did everything I could. I'm so sorry. But for me to say, sorry, I was too scared,
Mm.
like that was not what I want to for them. I don't want them to fear choices and decisions. I want them to just experience life to its fullest.
Yes. 100%. Okay, let's pick pieces from that because that was amazing. So what I'm hearing is that there was this huge component of self-trust. It was whatever this turns out as, I have what it takes to then transform that into a new decision. Like, even if that wasn't a conscious thought, that's kind of like a thing that was inside of you because so many people don't trust themselves enough to do something that has the potential to go south because they don't know if they have what it takes at the end of it to transform it or to make a new decision or to say, I gave it my best shot, etc. So there's a huge amount of self-trust there. And you've demonstrated that numerous times. The off-grid community, switching from radiography to being an English teacher, moving into the kind of nursery childcare industry, like you've demonstrated, I trust myself actually to do something I haven't studied. I trust the skills that I have. I trust that I have the ability to translate what I've learned into a different industry each time, like numerous times you've demonstrated that. But also this deep, deep curiosity in a childlike way where it's almost like, I just want to see what this is about. What? There's this lady that birthed at home. Let me join a whole bunch of home birthing Facebook groups. I don't even know if I want another child, but I want to know more about it. Like it's that curiosity. And so many people, um, oh, it's just not for me. It's just like, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I don't want to know about it. La, 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 fingers in the ear. Like, I'm just going to stick to what I've been told because it's just so much easier. But that also speaks to your nervous system capacity to hold things, like to hold a vast number of things and different aspects of decision, because it's like, okay, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, but holding all those pieces and saying, I'm going to pick this one and my nervous system is still aware and able to understand that either of these, many of these other options could play out. That's a strong nervous system right there. Like that's very grounded. Um, and in the process of making those decisions, you are expanding and developing a nervous system capacity because challenges will come up that you couldn't have held previously, and you got to learn very quickly to be able to do that and seek the right support, etc.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the journey of entrepreneurship and that uncertainty is in itself a spiritual transformative portal because like you mentioned, you were given this opportunity for a magic. You thought to yourself, this sounds exactly what I need. It fits my purpose, it fits my vision, but I don't have the money. Um, but I'll do what it takes to find it. And even in that conviction, the universe is like, yes, yes, yes. If you didn't have your husband, something else would have happened instead if you had still held that level of conviction. And I think that's a really beautiful permission slip for anyone that's watching, and also for your girls, that like you've modeled, because you're going to tell these stories, like it's a part of your lived experience. You're going to tell it, but also they feel it in your transmission and in your field of what you're capable of doing because they are, entangled with you. And that is like that actually makes me emotional because it's like the world goes from like this to this for them automatically. That is their baseline. And so many children in in the world, in the Western world, in affluent families who, have all these resources, may not even have that level of this kind of divergent view or perspective of what's possible just because of the limitation and trauma that is being carried in their parents and in their families.
Yeah.
But that is like an inheritance that's like priceless.
It is. And it's
Yeah.
for me, like being in an Indian family, like everything has been, everybody does things a certain way.
Mm,
Everybody parents in a certain way. Everybody follows the system exactly. And so for me, stepping out of that by
mm,
itself was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever done because it's almost like you're being birthed again.
yes.
It's like, yes, I'm born into this family, but I can see that the way that, and this is no disrespect to them because they're all amazing, but we're different.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can try and fit myself into the mold of what they expect of me, what they expect for my children. I was terrified for them to find out that I'm home educating. Like, and I hid it actually for a very long time. It was about 6 months into my business that I started to talk about it because the transformation over that 6 months was like I stopped caring so much
Yeah.
about what people felt. So I was like, okay, slowly, slowly, I can, open up about parts of my life. I can talk about the fact that I home educate. I didn't just jump into it. It was a journey.
Mhm.
But like we do everything different. We feed them differently. We, if in terms of if they're not well, with the way that we help them and assist them through their healing is very different. We don't medicate them. Like everything we do is completely different. And I think it always just comes back to the fact that if what they were doing or what my family or society is doing was working for me, then I wouldn't have had all the health issues I had in my 20s. I
Mm,
would have been told that I couldn't have kids when I was 26.
mm,
I wouldn't have had like there was so many issues that even my grandma, like I said this in my 20s, I was like, why do I have more health issues than my grandma, who's in her 70s at the
mm,
time?
mm.
I just didn't understand. And for me, I was like, we have to get curious.
Yeah.
And that was the unlocking for me. Like it was in the health field. It was like getting curious about how other people do life. Like we're African Indians,
Mhm.
but our roots were there and in
Mm,
India, and yet we are so far
yeah.
from what my ancestors knew. We're
Yeah.
so far. And I'm like, but I know that there must be wisdom in what they were doing. So why have we gone so the other way? And it's because we moved into the more Western culture, right? We've almost forgotten. And I find myself educating, like even like some of my elders on some of the things that they would have known as kids because it
Yeah.
forgotten about it, right? And it's interesting because there's been certain herbs and things that I've taken to help me in different situations. And my dad smelt it once. He was like, "Oh yeah, I remember my mum giving me something like this when I used to have a
Yeah.
tummy ache
Yeah.
as a child."
Yeah.
So it's like he'd forgotten.
Yeah.
So there's like that unraveling of like, there's been so many layers to this, but I think for me, unraveling like the cultural aspects
Yeah.
as well of what was expected of me. Like, how dare somebody like her go away from what was, my family came to the UK to create opportunities. So for me to leave that, leave a stable job, for me to they came here for education, for me to take my children out of that,
Mhm.
that's absolute craziness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of them, like, why would you do that? That's what we came here for.
Yes.
And so that for me has been really like the a challenging part, and yet on the other side of it, it's like a freedom that I can't literally explain because I no longer am bound to what other people think.
Yeah.
Live life on what I feel is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And I'm also very secure in
Mhm.
myself. So if somebody asks me the question about why I do things the way I do now, I no longer have to hide. I no longer get shaky. I can just say from my heart without being afraid
Yeah.
exactly why I've chosen what I do. But not from a place of like, this is better, because I also understand everyone needs to do what's right for them.
Yeah.
This is what's right for me and my family, and this is the journey that my girls are supposed to have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the just something that came as you were speaking is this component of us being in a country that is not our ancestral homeland and not an environment in which our ancestors evolved. Just the reading I'm doing around circadian and quantum biology, apparently the best way to optimize your health is to be in the environment that is reflective of your maternal mitochondria, so where your mother is from. Um, and and that's including where you conceive and where you are pregnant. And it's really interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of like health decisions and the way I live, etc. I am probably very, very aware and conscious and make some good choices. But I was born in the UK and my older sister was born in Sri Lanka. And she probably, loves her cream buns and, whatever else. And I have had many health problems throughout life. And I do want, and my mom was extremely stressed during her pregnancy with me. Whereas when she was pregnant with my sister, she was in Sri Lanka being pampered by her aunts and my grandma, and grounding every day and just out in the sun and literally had no job. And she was just 20 years old and the princess of the house. So I, in learning about mitochondrial health, can see how where we are and where we're supposed to be, and that huge gap in climate, in sun exposure, in the type of soil we're standing on, in cultural practices, in the rhythm of our lives, the actual speed, like I was mentioning this morning, it was like go, go, go from the moment I woke up. And that is my everyday for the last 10 years, right? And that is not how we've evolved, and that is not um, the roots that we're tied to. And our bodies are literally saying, hello, slow down,
yeah,
slow down. And yeah, so it's beautiful that you have this schedule with your children that is unbound by half terms and you know, you know, the 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. or whatever it is, because you couldn't even take those trips. You just went to Thailand and let the children be closer to the equator and have more sun exposure, which, you know, that is our ancestry.
Yeah, for
That is,
sure.
yeah.
It's really crazy because actually once you said this, and my entire pregnancy with my second was extremely stressful. Like I was stressed not because of her and the pregnancy, but because of the environment I was in. I
Yeah.
was now concerned about finances. I was concerned about all these different things. And she was actually born early. She was born at 36 weeks.
Mhm.
She was a tiny, tiny baby. Yes, she was born at home. Yes, I did it like I didn't actually know I was in labor
Mhm.
a bit later. And in the end, I was like, I'm just going to have her at home. Like, even though I was advised not to, my body was like, no, you need to do this. And actually, if I had tried to get to the hospital, I would have probably had her in the car.
Mm.
Glad that I listened, because
Mm.
it's a very fast birth. But what you said there in terms of like how you are and your health is based on how your mum was, like
Mm.
that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Like with my own kids, like my youngest has had nothing but the best.
Mm.
And yet we still deal with health issues with her. We're still dealing with things, and it's come from the stressful pregnancy,
Yeah.
and also the like very quick birth
Mm.
and the stress after as well, because she was small, I was advised to take her into hospital. At what point I was like, okay, like I've done the part that I wanted to do at home. So I was like, I'll
Yeah.
take advice. So we went in. And then the stress started because they kept on telling me that I needed to do test after test. And I would ask the question, okay, why?
Yeah.
Why do you want to do this test? Is she showing
Yeah.
concern? Oh, no, no, she's fine. Okay, so why are we doing it then? Oh, because she's a small baby. I was like, okay, but like in physiologically, if she's not showing any issues,
Mhm.
why does her size matter? And
Mhm.
this is the other thing, like Asian babies are generally small.
Mm.
So my eldest was bigger than my second, but
Mm.
even then, the concern was she's too small. I was like, no, she was the size of me as a baby.
Mm.
Actually, and she had no issues. Neither of my girls have had any issues,
Yeah.
but I was pushed to have test after test, which was really causing like a stress response in me and being um I guess they knew what kind of mom
Yeah.
I was.
Yes. Yeah.
They saw me coming.
Yeah.
So I would have all these consultants coming in and having the conversation with
Yeah.
me. And I was just like, I don't need to hear this.
Yeah.
Um, and that continued for the first couple of weeks of her life. Like I came home and they were still harassing me.
Mm.
And yeah, and I think that part, like I've had to like unpick that with homeopaths, and I'm seeing a medical herbalist at the moment, and this story always comes up of what happened in the first few weeks of her birth and the
Yeah.
stress that I felt,
Yes.
and how that has affected me in my health now, but
Yeah.
also affected her. And so we are getting lots of like alternative help to help us through that. But again, we're not supposed to be in
Yeah.
this environment. We're not supposed to be doing everything ourselves. Like you said, like your mum was pampered through
Yeah.
pregnancy, and that's how it should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
But society forces us to continue working until 2 weeks before we give birth.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that stress that you were feeling through being, it's not said, the words aren't said, but it's that field of judgment of like, oh, this is one of those mums. She's one of the ones that she doesn't get it, right? She's putting her child at risk. And although it's not those words, you can feel it and you know, and but it's frustrating because it's almost like, you know, you created this child, you know what's right for your child. And then your baby's nervous system is forming in relationship with yours. And if you're dysregulated, your baby's feeling that even if they're not putting their hands up and saying, goo goo gaga, I can feel you. It's happening. So yeah, I mean, I think the figures are it's like something like 18 months plus. The baby believes it is an extension of the mother. It's like part of the mother. And it totally makes sense. So yeah, of course you'd have to unpick that because you're aware, you know these things. And so it's almost like this underlying frustration of why didn't they just leave me to do my thing? I know what I'm doing. Like I've got the tools and yeah, it's frustrating because this is how we've done it for thousands of years. How do you think we came to be the human race as it is today? It's not unheard of. People still do give birth in waterfalls and jungles, etc. Communities where they have a much lower disease rate than we do in the Western world, where they don't have this artificial light exposure and, children being born in bright lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the whole environment that we are creating, growing, and birthing children in is so unnatural. And then to be told that doing what we've been doing that has got us here is the wrong thing. I mean, I wonder if anyone that is, in that industry has sat down and had just had that very basic thought process. I'm like, come on, guys, it's common sense. And I'm not saying that the medical industry isn't beautiful and helpful and useful in many cases, because it does have its place, but it also has its place to sit on the shelf and just watch as well.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. For
yeah.
sure. And I think when I read that your body will do what it needs to do in relations to birth if you give it the environment that's calming,
Yeah.
relaxing, I was like, surely, like I didn't get it. But
Mm.
actually, like when I had my second daughter, like I was so relaxed.
Yeah.
Felt it was intense, but it felt doable.
Yeah.
And with my first daughter, I was because I was living with my parents at the time because it was very long, short after we
Got back. Yeah.
from Hong Kong. So we
Yeah.
were living with them, and I was okay at home, like even in their place. Even
Yeah.
if it wasn't my home, I was okay. But when I got into hospital, I didn't know this at the time, but everything just ramped up in my body. Like all the contractions became unbearable. and and then they do all their processes when they get there. They want to see how dilated you are, and from that moment my body was just like no,
Mm.
and it all got really, it went downhill very quickly from there. And it's the environment is everything.
Yeah.
You are putting your, like, it's literally your stress hormones are going up, and that then stops the labor happening as it should. And so, like, we're not told this. We're just told that this is how you do it because that's how everyone does it. And I think a really powerful way of sharing is to just share our stories so
Yeah.
that we can educate other people through our own experiences. And that's where, like, having a voice, not being afraid, is one of the best things that we can do for each other,
Yeah.
because we're going to share our stories like people once did, and that's how wisdom was
Mm.
passed through,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It wasn't censored,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think there's just so many layers to that, I've had to overcome, and that most of us that are doing the things that we do have had to overcome. We all have our own amazing stories and
Mm.
experiences, but at the end of the day, like my purpose right now, and it will continue to evolve, is to just share so
Mm.
that people can make better decisions and more empowered decisions for their life, for their children, and to not feel stuck in this cage, because that's all I visualize was me as a child, was just being stuck in a cage, and I just didn't know what to do to get out. And nobody will free you from that cage. You have to free yourself. Like you
Yeah.
have to take like courageous decisions in every part of your life, but slowly, start getting curious. It starts with curiosity.
Mm.
Like nothing, when you said that people say it's not for me, like I believe that there's something for everybody. We just have to be willing to hear it at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
And that's yeah. I don't know whether that just takes a particular person or whether that's there within us all. I'm not sure, but I think
Mm.
fear is a massive, it disables us. And so how can we lose the fear?
Yeah.
And when things feel really hard, how can we just come back into the knowing that actually we're here for a bigger purpose?
Yeah.
Our our problems are not just getting to work and commuting and paying bills. Like
Yeah.
we're here for a bigger purpose than that. So can we get through that feeling of fear to get there, to feel our purpose? And yeah, yeah.
Mm. Love that. I really love that. It's almost like having this space for you to have contemplated who you have been and who you've had to be and who you've come to be and who you're becoming, to actually contemplate that, to be able to articulate it, to be able to offer these pearls of wisdom comes as a gift from the decisions you made because you have spaciousness in your day now, to not have to be like, girls, come on, get up, it's time for school, and like rush, rush, rush in the morning. It like you're gifted twice, three times. You're gifted the time, but you're gifted the transformation that it took to be the type of person that can have the time now and gets to make decisions about your future on your own terms. That huge agency, that self-agency, that huge amount of sovereignty. And then to look at um, the structure of the world, policy, and things that are happening in the world, and not be so plugged in to be able to be like, I can see what's playing out here, the COVID story, etc., and making decisions that aren't, because you're not in a workplace, for example, um, where the fear story is being kind of regurgitated, and there are mandates for certain things. So you're in the system. We're all in the system, unless you go and live in the jungle in a hut that you've handmade. We're all in the system. We live in houses and we go to shops and we exchange energy in the form of currency, in form of money, etc. We're still in the system, but we've stepped back enough to look at all of these players and this whole circus, and we're like, okay, how do I want to interplay and interact with it in a way that serves my children, nourishes me, and so that I can be the best possible expression of myself to elevate this collective consciousness, to serve communities, and we've all got things that we're really passionate about. I'm a huge human rights person. Like, I'm there. I've always been that way. I will speak when nobody else is speaking. And some people, it's the environment. And for some people, it's children's causes. And for some people, it's like advocacy in the health space. And it doesn't matter. Just pick your thing, but speak about it and be brave enough, because let that be the thing that gives you permission to step into who you were supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
So much.
One thing that I heard you mention a few times is the role of your husband in this journey that you've taken on. And it sounds like, he's an incredible person as well as an incredible husband for you. And I'm sure it's the other way around too. I'm sure he has beautiful things to say about you, but he's not here. So let's pick him up. um, how important do you think? Because, there are many women and men who haven't aligned with their person yet. And that can be challenging, that can be hard, but it can also be a blessing because it's like you still have that opportunity. I coach couples, and On the surface, things look fine and dandy, a lovely little family, but there are so many issues, and you can see often that these people are completely unaligned, and they made a decision to be together based on a timeline of marriage. Lots of
Mm.
Asian couples, you know, gotta do it in a certain time frame and all of those things. How important would you say is to have a spouse, a partner, a soulmate, the father or mother of your children, which is huge, that is capable of challenging your beliefs? Because that's exactly what he did. He said, actually, Preena, there's another way.
So when I met him, um,
Hmm.
I didn't know how things like, for example, we weren't aligned. I
Yeah.
wasn't holistic. He kind of was.
Hmm.
But we did not know that years down the line, we would be aligned in the decisions that we've made for our children.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And actually, meeting him at 21 was a massive risk because there's a lot of people and a lot of friends that I had that have found somebody. And unfortunately, like as time's gone on, especially the division after 2020, if
Mhm.
you don't see eye to eye in the world, it's a difficult situation to be
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
And I do think like it's important to have somebody who challenges you.
Yes.
But I do think that there has to be sort of a respect of, okay, if they're not ready,
Mhm.
then can I love them anyway?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then you've got your answer, right? But if so, it depends on on what that person is trying to challenge us on. For
Mhm.
example, if I right now, who's very much on natural remedies, not medicating, not going to school, all of the things, if he wasn't on that same wavelength, I don't know how I would live in a way that felt ease for me.
Yeah.
'Cause it would be conflict constantly.
Yeah.
And so I think it's always worth like we have to come to a middle ground in relationship, and it's always about that. I talk to him about this all the time. It's like we don't always see eye to eye.
Mhm.
We do have the willingness to see each other's point of view and to just take a step back from our own ego and
Mhm.
just see what the other person has gone through. Because one of the things I always say to him is, you're not really a people person at times. You're
Yeah.
not great with conversation. Like I love talking to people, and he's just like the other side. And then I'm like, hold on, look at his upbringing.
Mhm.
Look at how he's been brought up to not really converse in like a tone like now. It's
Mhm.
he's very factual based.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I've learned to love that exactly as it is and not want to try and change it. But when I first met him, it was something that I was like, oh, you're a bit weird. Like, I don't really get this. And we had many arguments. Like he was very much brought up in a way of how you're presented is
Mhm.
very important. Like being from Hong Kong, he's Chinese.
Yeah.
He was from a very well-off family.
Mhm.
And he wore a suit from the age of like 15.
Mhm. That's so cute.
Yeah. When we were in a restaurant and I was being really loud, and I think I was eating with my hands, and I was just being like not how
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was like, no. And what do you mean? This is me. Like this is how and he was like, no, this is not what we do. And we just had like a really big argument like at that time. And I was like, and so but then he could see over time, he was like, no, why are we living in a way that we have to care constantly about our appearance and how we present ourselves
Yeah.
to strangers? Because whilst he was very much, I don't care about what my family think, um, he still cared about what strangers thought.
Yeah.
And so, like for me, I was the other way. I was like, I don't care about what the guy next door thinks, but I really very invested in what my family thinks. So actually, we were very good at like helping each other unravel that and just being like, if you want to eat with your hands, do what you like, you
Right.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
completely okay. But yeah, he's challenged me in so many ways, but I always had the willingness to listen and learn and understand that like I don't know everything,
Mm.
and also that there's always work to be done in my
Yes.
always.
Mm.
So like when I did first meet him, I realized that there was a lot of stuff that I needed to. He was bringing up a lot of like programming, and I was
Mm.
like, I need to go and speak to somebody. So I ended up seeing a counselor just because I needed to talk to someone about the stuff that was coming up.
Yeah.
And the counselor said to me, she was like, the stuff that you've experienced growing up, the teasing, the
Mm.
calling of names, like I used to be called names like as that was fun.
Mm.
That's actually not love. And I
Mm.
was like, what?
Yeah.
And it was so brainwashed that that was because that's how I was talking to him.
Yeah.
Like, please don't talk to me like that. And I was like, oh, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
And it would really hurt him, and I couldn't understand because I was like, that's all I'd heard my entire life. And for somebody outside to say that's actually not how we show love,
Yeah.
like God, like I had no idea.
Mm.
And so for me, then it was like breaking away from like, okay, if that's not how we show love, how do we show love? I actually don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to, I never told anybody I loved them, like my parents. I was never able to open my heart. I was always closed off. And now I literally tell my children like 20 times a day how much I love them. Like, but I didn't hear that growing up.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's not because it wasn't felt, it was because nobody said it. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Definitely resonates. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's a standard Asian thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We do what we need to do for you. That's love. Like that's food on the table, etc. Yeah. And yeah, their story is different. It's a story of survival and of trying to just get by in a new country. My mum was a single mum when we started off, so you know, it's a completely different story. They don't have time to be hugging us and saying I love you. But yeah, and we get to then call in all of the resource, all of those lost soul pieces and express all of it because we leave parts of our soul, and just going back and doing all the work that we do and just so retrieving those pieces and being like, oh, now I can express this too. I didn't even know I had this in me. But because I've interacted with this particular person who's now become my husband, he is being that person that is challenging me to ask myself, do I want this person enough to meet his need of being spoken to in a particular way? Do I have what it takes to speak in that way? Oh, actually, I do. And the reason I speak in this way is because there's a part of me that's hurt because that's how I was spoken to. And
Yeah.
just the healing crisscrossy spider web is just crazy and it never ends, but it can be fun. We can do it through pleasure too. It doesn't have to be, oh God, there's another thing, you know.
Yeah.
This is sometimes how it feels.
Does. This weekend actually, I was at he hosts healing ceremonies, and one of the thing was just like, so we did a load of breath work, and then it was like screaming, and it
Mm.
was just letting go of everything that you've had held inside. I didn't even know I could make that sound. Like, and it was fun. I was laughing whilst I'm doing it, and it was just like the like most invigorating feeling of just being like, oh my God, I can get it all out. But I'm not just healing for myself.
Yeah,
I'm healing for like
yeah,
seven generations
yeah,
of like trapped
yeah,
feeling, like,
yeah,
suppression,
yeah.
and just being able to let it go. And it was really fun.
Love
It
it.
was good. So
Love it. Love
good.
it. Love it. Let's start winding down. I'm borrowing the kind of idea from Stephen Bartlett, how he asks his next guest a question from the previous guest. So the previous guest to you was Kira Lee. She's a quantum health clinician in Australia, and she takes a big emphasis on women's health and healing their cycles and supporting them in their pregnancy fertility journeys. And she left a question, and you can just close your eyes if you want or feel into what your answer might be. But it's, what's your prayer for the next generation?
Oh my gosh. To God, there's so many layers to this. I don't even know how to
Yeah.
verbalize it, but I'll do my best. The next generation, what I would love and what I envision is that they are born into a world that accepts them exactly as they are.
Mm.
As a result, they accept themselves with every flaw and every beautiful part of them. They they know nothing needs to change. They're whole as they are. And I think it's that just feeling whole, like you are enough, like to know that you are enough exactly as you are. Your birthright was to feel enough and to also know that you have the possibility to create anything that you want in your life. Like
Yeah.
there are no limitations for you. Like you just go for it. It doesn't matter how crazy you sound because you have the knowing that you are perfect. And so that you can't make wrong decisions. Like you just do what you need to do. Um, and I think that's it. I think that's it.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Just to come here in wholeness, which we do, and to not fall asleep, to
Yeah.
not fall asleep along the way. Because people often ask me the question, when did you wake up? And I always say, I don't think I ever fell asleep.
Mm,
I think that maybe there were just a few months here and there where I was having naps. But I don't think I ever fell asleep. And to have a world that supports that, that would be beautiful. And I love that. I love that as a prayer for our future generations. What would be a question that you would leave for the next person that comes on, not knowing who it is?
there is nothing. I'm really like, I've just gone completely blank.
It's okay. It can be absolutely anything. It doesn't have to even fit the theme of what we've spoken about today. It can be silly, funny, random.
Sometimes I find it quite hard to articulate.
Mm,
It's just sort of like there, and I
yeah,
can feel something, but I can't quite get it out.
yeah,
I think it's along the lines of maybe you can help me articulate.
yeah.
It's about becoming pure joy. So like what potentially pure happiness and pure joy in who we are.
Yeah. So almost like, what decisions can you make to create a life of pure joy and happiness? Are we going there?
Yeah, yeah, that would be perfect. Thank you for
Yeah. That's
articulating that
okay.
great.
Yeah, so and that could be daily, like small decisions, or it could be a big one. Like it doesn't, sometimes it's that cumulative 1% that, really moves the needle. I
Yeah,
love it. I love it. I love it. Don't know who the next guest is, but I'm sure they're gonna have a great piece of wisdom for us from that question. Thank you so much.
no,
Thank you,
thank
Preena. I loved that. I loved that so much.
you.
You've just been a huge permission slip that your baseline could be this. It doesn't take extra effort because this is Preena's baseline. This is how she lives. And so many of us, for me, I'm like, yeah, yeah, what you've just shared, like your whole life is normal. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, of course you'd home birth. Why wouldn't you? Like, of course you'd homeschool. Like, duh. Like, but that is like wild to some people. And to me, it's like, I completely understand why we need to in the structure of the world of sending kids to nurseries and stuff. But like I posted the other day with my baby nephew, it breaks my heart, probably more than it does for my sister and it's her child. I'm like, but why can't he just stay at home? He just wants to be at home, And I'm like, it's not normal. Why is he like with other people? Who are these people?
Yeah.
And that's because we've decided that that is our baseline. But what if we were to decide it's something else?
Mm.
And especially if you don't have children yet, if you've not aligned with your soulmate or whoever you're choosing to be with yet, you can make those changes now and it will be an easy transition. You don't have to wait. Today is a better day than any other day.
No, I love that so much. There's so much wisdom coming from you. You're really, really privileged to be here today.
Oh, yay. So thank you so much. This is Preena. I'm going to tag her Instagram so you can follow the amazing business that she's building for herself, for her family, for the world, for her community. And I'm sure she'll be happy to speak to you if you have any questions about it. Is there
Thank
anything
you,
you want to
Reggie.
say, or does that feel complete?
Yes, it's beautiful.
Okay. Yay.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye.